Make some noise.
I think that was probably truly the first Typo Negative album, because Slow, Deep, and Hard was in fact a bunch of leftover Carnivore songs. And I believe that people become a reflection of their experiences. So my life changed a lot between Carnivore and when Typo was instigated. Let's just say from like 86, 87 to like 89 or 90, I started to listen to a lot of different music, like The Cure, Curve, Lycia, Simple Minds. You know, people want to call that pussy music. Well, you know what? You call me a pussy, you are what you eat.
After a disastrous tour in the States and Europe, leading to heinous accusations about the band members, and later retelling the events in the form of a fake live album, Typo Negative would get the last laugh. For their follow-up to Origin of the Feces, the band would return to the Systems 2 recording studio, a reoccurring location where they would record every album in their discography. Peter wanted to challenge himself as a songwriter by writing more melodic songs, since it's known that it's harder to write a melody than to scream one's brains out. In a sense, Peter would expand on his love of music from the late 80s, combined with his pre-established love of the Beatles and Black Sabbath, of course. Kenny would also show Peter bands like the Misfits and Nick Cave, as well as going to clubs in the Lower East Side of Manhattan like Alcatraz and King Tut's Wawa Hut, which would have underground gothic music playing on the jukebox. To prepare the drums, Sal and Josh would listen to other albums, stoned out of their minds, to figure out the snare drum sound, which took 2 days to achieve from tuning to mic placement. Unlike Slow, Deep, and Hard, which was written before they got into the studio, this album's writing process was figured out in the form of jamming sessions. In addition, this would mark the third appearance of the Benson Hoist Lesbian Choir, a fictitious organization that consisted of Peter's friends, collaborators, guests, and even members of the band performing backing vocals, choir vocals, and vocal harmonies. As for its pronunciation, it was how people in Brooklyn pronounced the neighborhood of Bensonhurst. Production was handled once again by Josh Silver, who would produce every Typo Negative album before and after. He and Peter would fight tooth and nail to do what they wanted. Bandmates said that at the time, Roadrunner tried to push a producer onto the band, trying to make something their way, and with Josh being an audio engineer and producer, was not going to let that happen. Along with this being Josh, came concerns of studio budget being used appropriately.
And then when we got into the studio, you know, I always get reminded by Josh, $6 a minute! $6 a minute!
Essentially, Typo Negative always had a DIY mentality when it came to making their albums. Under an early working title of Things Worse Than Death and Other Acts of God, Typo Negative's third album would be released under the title Bloody Kisses. The album's cover consists of two goth girls, an idea of Peter's, though he and Josh would later look back with complaints on the cover. For Peter, his main grievance was that the green was off, as it was supposed to be Pantone PMS 360, as opposed to Slow, Deep, and Hard's Pantone 369. For Josh, it was that one of the models on the cover had crimped 80s style hair, generally saying that the girls looked ungothic. All over the album, there are bits of typos, mainly Peter's usual self-deprecating humor. Don't mistake lack of talent for genius. Josh would like to sincerely apologize to the following. No text. Crude, rude, stewed, lewd. And these are just a few examples. Musically, as stated before, Bloody Kisses is more melodic than Typo's previous albums. blending in that mixture of gothic rock, doom metal, new wave, and even elements of psychedelic pop, with the hardcore elements being significantly reduced. The keys and acoustic guitars are more prominent throughout the album. While it was hinted on Carnivore's male supremacy, and even on parts of Slow, Deep, and Hard, on Bloody Kisses, we get to hear Peter singing on full display, as well as marking the first time Kenny Hickey does co-lead vocals on songs. On this album, we hear him on Black No. 1 and We Hate Everyone. Like with Slow, Deep, and Hard, the songs are laid out in cantos, but only with a few songs like Christian Woman, We Hate Everyone, and possibly Too Late Frozen. Bloody Kisses also marks the first appearance of sitar on a Typo Negative album, being played by Paul Bento, who according to Sal was Peter's first choice for Typo's guitarist, and would later be in the revived Carnivore in the late 2000s. Sal has also said that Peter played guitar solos on the more psychedelic songs on the second half of the album, like Can't Lose You. This was done because Peter wanted it done a specific way, and because of Kenny's, at the time, sloppy playing. Something that Sal acknowledged, which led to Peter wanting him out of the band, in which Sal would defend Kenny.
He played a couple of the solos. There was a couple of solos that he wanted done a certain way, and he took the guitar and did them, because they weren't coming out the way he wanted it to. And it was all the psychedelic stuff, the real Beatles type of stuff. I think in Can't Lose You, and the trippy stuff in the latter half of the record.
Did him and Kenny fight about that, or was it?
Kenny was fine with it. I don't think Kenny had a choice. Kenny was almost kicked out of the band on the first record. Peter wanted to kick him out a couple of times during the Slow, Deep, and Hard days because his playing was very sloppy. And I defended him. I said, well, we can't do that to the guy. You know, he's trying. And he got better over the years. But he was pretty sloppy in the beginning, and it drove Peter up the wall. I defended him, and I was like, we can't do that. Give him a chance. And so he did. And sure enough, he ended up having a nice career out of that.
Lyrically, Peter's humor and moments of sincere emotion are still present, but written metaphorically. The sarcasm is present on Black No. 1, which would become the band's biggest hit. Named after the hair dye of the same name, the song is based on a girlfriend Peter was dating at the time, who was so self-obsessed and loved the darkness, as the song takes jabs at goth culture. All of this was written out in Peter's head while he was driving a garbage truck during his work for the Parks Department. It's ironic how the song takes jabs at goth culture because the band would make fun of themselves as well, given how their hair was dyed black, and Peter would have his canines filed to look like vampire fangs. It's important to note that during the early 1990s there was a massive vampire craze, and with Peter being the big boy that he was able to fit into the aesthetic easily. They seem to have known what they were doing. A music video was made for the song as it was released as a single, but the song was edited down for the video. Something Peter was not happy about. Even his bandmates said he refused to listen to any radio edits of his songs.
And then we did a radio edit. Josh did an edit of the song because then, they wouldn't play a song longer than 4 minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about
seconds.
this.
So Josh did an edit, and it was longer than 4:30, but they put 4:29 on the label anyway. It was longer.
Josh was like, I have to edit this song, Peter. What do you want me to do with it? I don't want to hear it. It's my child. You can't cut it up. I just don't even want to hear it. I don't think Peter ever listened to any of the radio
To the radio edits?
Their first single, Christian Woman, the band's second most well-known song, is about a woman struggling with her faith and her sexual urges. According to Peter, the song was based off a woman that he was romantically involved with at the time. 2 music videos were made. One that was professionally made, but the song is edited down, and a full-length version, also known as the Nail Driver version, that is made up of roughly filmed coverage, very DIY style, as well as live footage of the band playing at L'Amour. This version was directed by both Peter and someone by the name of Conrad Roman, and edited by Roman himself. On a YouTube upload, There's a pinned comment from what is supposedly Roman's channel that reveals details about the making of this version of the music video. The people playing the gas-masked priests were members of Life of Agony, and along with the L'Amour footage, the video was also shot in Peter's basement and his backyard, as well as the apartment of an ex-girlfriend of Roman's. Some of this information can be confirmed on the DVD re-release of After Dark.
Oh, this is the bootleg Christian woman.
Right.
Isn't that Life of Agony?
Yep.
Yeah, that's Life of Agony.
That's in L'Amour's in Brooklyn. And that was the Hammer Gear scrim that got left behind in Europe. Oh, the Rapture.
How much was the budget?
The pain,
How much
William.
was the budget? It was like, honestly, like $600 or something.
How much was the real one for Roadrunner?
I
No
don't know,
idea.
like 75,000.
Yeah, I think that was it. I
Something.
think it was 75.
Something
Damn.
ridiculous.
Big difference. Who directed this?
What was his name? Well, you don't want to mention his name, is that the thing?
Conrad.
Is this Lamar's?
Yeah. This has got to be, what, 7 years ago?
What is that, Salin? Sal's playing drums here?
Yeah, Sal was in the band. It's got to be like 7 years
Probably like 93.
93, yeah.
The album's title track was inspired by the death of Peter's 17 or 18-year-old cat named Venus. Given that the pet was there for half of Peter's life at the time, it devastated him. Given the origin of the subject matter, he had to make the lyrics metaphorical, as he stated,
"No one wants to hear about a guy who's 6'8" with long black hair and fangs crying about his fucking cat."
As a result, the song on a surface level is Peter mourning the death of someone he loved who took their own life, when in reality it was written to grieve over his pet cat. It still makes for a great song, and is certainly not Delilah. Still a great Queen album, by the way. Too Late Frozen is about the same ex-girlfriend Peter wrote about in Slow Deep and Hard. For context, Peter dated a woman for a decade who would cheat on him with another man. Along with songs like Unsuccessfully Coping with the Natural Beauty of Infidelity, Zero Tolerance, and Prelude to Agony, this event inspired Too Late's lyrics. Following the tribal Faye Ray Come Out and Play, Kill All the White People and We Hate Everyone are spiritual follow-ups to Carnivore, having that thrashy hardcore edge to them. The songs were made as a tongue-in-cheek response to the controversy and allegations levied against Typo Negative following their European tour during the Slow Deep and Hard era. These were based on a mixture of the lyrical content on Slow Deep and Hard and sarcastic comments Peter made while on the tour. The former was made to mock how certain groups of people blame white people for all the world's problems, while the latter was made to reply to the aforementioned controversy and mock people who throw potentially damaging accusations towards the band. Set Me on Fire is a 60s inspired jam about a drug addict setting themselves aflame. Josh's keys sound like they're out of the John Lord playbook. The Beatles-esque Can't Lose You is a psychedelic song. Inspired by I Am the Walrus by the Beatles, there are two messages hidden within this song. Along with Kenny talking about words being written in fluids, there's also a playful jab at Monty Connor, who was vice president and A&R for Roadrunner at the time. For those who don't know, Monty Connor was responsible for signing most of Roadrunner's roster from the 80s all the way up until the early 2010s. One of the few songs that's not loved by most of the Typo camp is Blood and Fire. Kenny saying he hates it and thinks the song is horrible. Sal thought the song was too 80s sounding, and considered the song filler, with him, Kenny, and Josh cringing about the idea of them playing that song live at the time. Josh had a similar comment about how it sounded 80s, saying how romantic music wasn't really his thing. Instead of feeding into a stereotype of a then bygone era, he would rather be realistic about the subject of romance. Because as a lot of us know, people who write the happiest lovey-dovey songs are some of the most miserable people on the planet, compared to people who make a lot of dark and sad songs, who on the contrast are way more nice and chill in comparison. Bloody Kisses also introduces another staple on their albums that would appear until their second to last album: opening tracks and interludes. Though the latter, they don't appear on every single album. Here's what we know about some of these tracks. The soundscapes were Josh Silver's creations, created while he was stoned. The intro track, Machine Screw, starts with the sounds of a woman moaning with machinery in the background. The woman in this soundscape was Josh's ex-girlfriend, and that's all that will be said in this segment. 30 If was based on Peter's experience in a motorcycle accident where he fell off, the day before he turned 30 years old. The joke is that Peter wouldn't have become 30 had he died in that motorcycle accident. According to Sal, the title of Dark Side of the Womb was a play on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. Along with the soundscapes, Bloody Kisses is the second of 5 albums to feature a cover song. The cover on this album was Summer Breeze by soft rock band Seals and Croft. The band initially recorded a version called Summer Girl, which featured humorous new lyrics, similar to how they covered Hey Joe with Hey Pete. Unfortunately, when Seals and Croft saw the new lyrics, they hated the changes, so Peter had to sing the original lyrics. The Summer Girl version can be found on the CD single of the cover, which has since been uploaded online, as it was never officially re-released outside of that single. And what's funny is that the original Summer Girl lyrics are still present in the CD booklet of Bloody Kisses. More specifically, the mid-2000s reissue of Bloody Kisses. Ain't that a hoot? There was also a Digipak re-release of the album with a rearranged track listing that omits the soundscapes and the songs Kill All the White People and We Hate Everyone, and in their place is a new song, Suspended in Dusk, an outtake from the Bloody Kisses recording sessions. The Digipak was Peter's idea, because he wanted to make the album consistent and that the faster songs threw off the vibe, and that adding another slow song would fix that. For Sal, this was a challenge, because as he says it, it's harder to play slow than it is to play fast. But when it comes to the Digipak re-release as a whole, it is something that Kenny and Josh were not fond of. Kenny calling Suspended in Dusk really slow, endless, and painful, and saying that Peter wanted to remove the spontaneity of the original album. Josh flat out hated the reissue, as he loves the eclectic nature of typo-negative songs, while acknowledging that Peter wanted to maintain continuity, which he would do on the next album. Bloody Kisses was released on August 17, 1993. The album was initially not a success. It would only become a success a few years later, so it was business as usual for the band at the time. This album was a series of firsts for the label, as it was the first release by Roadrunner Records to be certified gold and later platinum, and would chart at 166 on the US Billboard 200, something that baffled the band.
When I had found out that Bloody Kisses went gold, I'm like, this is like a nation of deaf people. I'm like, I didn't take the band seriously. I mean, we would call ourselves assholes before you did, but we really meant it. And I would come in and say, I can't believe you fucking jerk-offs are actually paying to fucking see this. And there was a few shows that I called people up on stage, and I gave them their money back, and I threw them out. I said, you fucking asshole, and I'm calling your mother, and I would call their mother up on stage. Do you know where your fucking son is right now? Kids today, I don't know.
This marks the last typo-negative album that would feature the original lineup, as Sal Abrascato would leave the band after only playing just a few shows. He later joined Life of Agony. It is important to reiterate that at the time, Typo Negative was not a full-time band, and never intended to be. Had it gone Peter's and by extension Josh's way, They would have been like post-Revolver era Beatles, where they were essentially a studio-only project. By the band's own acknowledgement, Peter and Josh hated touring and playing live, and would have rather done music on the side while maintaining a stable job. It's because of this that Sal decided to join Life of Agony, as they wanted to be a full-time band.
Yeah. Peter's stake was to make records and never leave Brooklyn, never cross a bridge.
Had no design to to do that to do like Typo Negative for a living. That was never part of his agenda at all.
He hated it. Carnival played Baltimore once. He was still traumatized from it. He was still complaining about it.
But really, that was that was Peter's agenda. He had no plans on making a career out of it.
We talked him into it. It took some time, but we finally talked him into it. Peter said, "That's it. I'm never going on the road again. I'm going to be in this band, fine. I'll play some local shows. That's it. We'll make records." So that's what we were convinced was
going to do, like what the Beatles did.
Yeah, except, the Beatles were popular when they did it.
Right. But that's really what he wanted to do. He didn't really want to tour. It wasn't, he wanted to be home, and he wanted to, be creative, and he wanted to, make records and, continue to make music, but he had no desire to, live on a bus.
It's a great history. I wouldn't change it. Everyone says, oh, he made the biggest mistake of his career. Hindsight's 20/20. At that moment, I was fighting a lot with Pete. He was insisting he didn't want to go on tour, whether it was a premeditated plan or not. It just was like, I had just done the Life Agony record. Those kids were going to do like 10 months of touring, and I was a lot younger than those guys in Typo. And, I was like, I got to make a move. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of Brooklyn. I want to get on the road. I want to do this. This is my dream. And that's really what it was. It was like, this is my dream, and I need to get out there. And, sure enough, though, the label, they offered Peter some kind of security that gave him enough courage to leave the job and go on tour. Because I had done 2 tours with Peter, and they were disastrous. Peter hated it. He wanted to go home every day. He bitched and complained. He wanted to go home. Let's go home to his mother, and things like that. So, he was a mama's boy. He loved his mother very much. He was a good Catholic boy. He really was.
It wasn't until the success of Bloody Kisses into the new year and pushing by Roadrunner that Peter and company would finally quit their jobs. Only if Roadrunner gave Peter some sort of financial security in order to go on tour. For a new drummer, they recruited Johnny Kelly, who also has a shared history with the Typo camp. Like with Kenny and Sal, Johnny knew of Peter because of Carnivore when he was a teenager, and was already friends with Kenny and Sal. Johnny knew Sal because they were friends since they were kids, before he met anyone else. He met Kenny while he was still in high school. As for his feelings on Carnivore, Johnny was also a fan like Kenny and Sal were, and he worked at a rehearsal studio that Carnivore frequented. When Peter formed Typo Negative, Johnny was Sal's drum tech and was the band's van driver during the Slow, Deep, and Hard era. He was already a fan of the first album and didn't care if they were going to tour or not. He just wanted to be in the band by his own admission.
Even when I joined the band, a few years later after, I joined the band in '93, and Peter used to come hang out at my shop. I used to work on cars. Right before I joined the band, even he told me then, he was like, don't quit your day job. It's not that kind of band. We're not going anywhere. We'll play on the weekends, and that's it. And I was like, I don't care what we do. I was like, I just want to be in the band. I was like, I love the band. I love the music. So whether we play in Brooklyn or if we don't play at all, I was like, I had no interest.
He was in for a surprise. In 1994, Typo Negative would share the stage with several prolific acts, starting with 9 Inch Nails, who, according to the band, Trent Reznor was a fan of the band and cited them as an influence. Though this tour didn't go so smoothly, given how audiences were in the 90s when a band opened for 9 Inch Nails. And this tour was before everyone in Typo quit their jobs.
But the hardest band
The hardest band for us ever to open up for was definitely 9 Inch Nails, because at the time, I know that Trent
liked the band and considered the band like an influence, and that's why he had us, and I'm really, really grateful to this day for him for having us. It didn't do much for us because at the time he was playing theaters 3 nights a week on the West Coast, coming down the West Coast. And at the time, 9 Inch Nails was so hot that their audience had just 9 Inch Nails, blinders on. They didn't want to hear or see anyone, man. They literally threw shit at us every night. Go, these fucking guys, 9 Inch Nails, fuck you! And that was the only time that ever happened to us, really, But, it was still a great thing.
After that tour, they were invited to open for Motley Crue during the John Corabi era, which would break the band into the mainstream, which was doubted by the Type O camp given how different they were compared to Motley Crue. But because Motley Crue liked Bloody Kisses, they invited them on tour.
You guys opened for Motley Crue too, I believe, correct?
Another example. We were like, Motley Crue, you crazy? We can't open up for Motley Crue. That's nuts. They're a hair band. They're going to kill us, to throw shit at us. Man, were we wrong, man. They loved it. Their audience loved us. That was the Corabi.
When was that?
That was 1994, I believe, or 95, when or in the cusp of it. And it was all sheds, all summer long, all over the States, all outdoor sheds. It was a rock and roll, camp, summer camp. It was the most awesome experience ever. We just came from we had a shitty bus and I think a trailer, and we were playing crap holes across the country, for 50 people in.
Okay.
Trying to break Bloody Kisses, And I guess those guys were listening to our record while they were recording their record, and they liked the band. So they just, on a whim, said, I want to take these guys out. And my manager was like, you got to take this tour. We were like, no fucking way. We'll never fit in with that. They're going to kill us. He was like, believe me, take this fucking tour. You're going to be playing in front of people you'd never be playing from. Otherwise, they would never heard of you. Man, was he right. Because Motley Crue broke this band.
Yeah.
This tour would go from June to August. It was because of the success of this tour that everyone in the band quit their jobs, and Type O Negative became a full-time band. On this tour, Type O shared the stage with bands like King's X and various bands on selected dates and shows in Texas, bands like Dangerous Toys and Brother Kane. From October to December, they would open for Danzig and share the stage with Godflesh, with Deftones appearing on one date of that tour. Along with the Motley Crue tour, the Danzig tour would help expand Type O's popularity, and the next year would help continue that momentum. Along with all the touring, October 4th would see the release of Nativity in Black, a tribute album to Black Sabbath. A wide variety of bands would cover Black Sabbath material from the 1970s, which is considered the peak of the band. At the end of the album was a cover of the song Black Sabbath, covered by Type O Negative, which they requested to be the last song on the album. This would be the first recording to feature Johnny Kelly on drums. This cover is a lot more haunting and atmospheric. It sounds like something out of a horror movie score. Something else Type O Negative would be known for was making their cover songs sound different from the original.
Let's dance before me.
Oh, can you help me feel love, love? 'Cause I'm not made of steel, love, love. Oh, can you help me feel love, my love? 'Cause I'm not made of steel,
1995 would continue Typo's popularity into the mainstream, as this was the year that Bloody Kisses would go gold and later platinum. They would open for Pantera on their Far Beyond Driven tour from January to April. A lot of insanity happened on this tour. When you have two bands that are filled with chaotic personalities, hijinks will ensue. And with these two bands, they would mess with each other on stage, throwing stuff at each other, disrupting entire performances, antics that would have been a roadie's nightmare on that tour.
Both bands were a nightmare for everyone that worked for us. Something happened every night. I mean, it just escalated. It started with me and Peter walking out on stage with a cafeteria table filled with cold cuts and boiled eggs and stuff while they were playing in the middle of their set and just throwing shit out. I saw Phil Anselmo, just as he was turning his head and singing, Peter throw a red onion, and the red onion, Phil turned around, opened his mouth, and the red onion stuck straight in his mouth. Oh man, it was insane. Because they were wise asses, and we were equal wise asses. You know, I don't think they'd ever toured with anybody that was, equal jerk-offs as them. And like we just went right in for it with them.
They had the money to pull off the pranks, though. We didn't have the money then.
It became a contest, and it just ended with 500 rolls of toilet paper up to their waists, their instruments going down, nothing but feedback, and just us running across stage tackling each other. This is an arena. They played 3 songs, I think. Finally, Vinny just said, "Fuck it," threw his drums over, joined in. We were squeezing a bottle of ketchup in fucking Dime's eyes and screaming, "Ah!"
Pantera got banned from that venue for like 3 years.
3 years, yeah, they could play. It was in Vegas.
They weren't allowed to play there anymore.
But they were just goof-offs and wise-asses, and so were we. And it's just like jerk-offs from Brooklyn and jerk-offs from Texas, man. But we had known them for many years before that. I mean, the first person I met from that crew, me and Johnny, was actually Rita and Kurt Winstein.
After Pantera, they went on tour opening for Queensryche from April to July on their Road to the Promised Land tour. In between the Queensryche tour, Typo played one of their biggest shows of their career, co-headlining the Saturday show of the Dynamo Open Air Festival in the Netherlands, with Paradise Lost closing out the night, and played a Halloween show with Electric Hellfire Club and the Misfits at the start of the Graves era. In between all this would lead to an event that would bring the band more publicity. And unfortunately, it has nothing to do with the music. At some point in 1995, Peter posed for the August edition of Playgirl magazine. For this shoot, Peter did something that apparently other men didn't do for this magazine. Let's just say they're expansion packs. They weren't feature length, and that Peter wanted to show his fully expanded. While it's likely that this shoot did get Peter some ladies, sadly to his dismay, he would learn from an associate of Kenny's that 23% of Playgirl's subscribers were female, and as a result, he would get hit on by gay men.
When I did that stupid Playgirl thing back in '95, we had a signing, and I would open it up. Hey, I know that dick. One time, this guy, and like the band sitting next to me, signing typo stuff too. And so the guy hands me the Playgirl thing, and I tilt it, and fucking cum drips out from the fucking middle, right onto my lap. and the band saw it, and they like just they fell over in their chairs, and I said, "Can I have a napkin, please?" You know. Yeah. I was kind of good natured about it. I didn't appreciate it, you know.
Years later, Peter would express regret about the Playgirl shoot, saying that he was pressured into doing it, and called it a naive publicity stunt. Even his own family learned about the magazine. Pete would say about the gay men hitting on him, quote,
"After I did that, I thought, oh my god, what did I do? It was more than upsetting that so many guys had it. Girls, okay, but there just seemed to be at least as many guys. Not that I'm homophobic, but it was certainly irritating."
End quote. This widespread attention Typo would get would result in them appearing on television, including VH1 and MTV Headbangers Ball, which according to Johnny was done out of reluctance due to them not liking the band.
It got to a point the band was getting too popular. They couldn't ignore us anymore. They were going to have to put us on Headbangers Ball. They didn't want to. They didn't like the band, and it's, you know, and that's okay. You know, whatever. They didn't like it, but it had gotten too big. They couldn't ignore it anymore. We would do these videos, and they kept on rejecting them. They were saying, "No, this like the Love You to Death video." They'd always come back with like a list of, it can't have this and this, that we're objecting to this. This is crossing the line. The girl with the baby, with the doll, you know, like they were, she can't be stabbing the doll, you know, can't do this, can't. And they would come up with all kinds of excuses to avoid having to play the video. Finally, we submitted versions that they would approve, and you know, it probably gets played a lot more now, I think, than it did back then.
Yes, I think things are much more accepted now. I mean, if you go to YouTube, those videos, you know, they have millions of views.
Yeah, but back then it was really tough. They just, the band just didn't fit in with their formats and stuff.
Like many bands in the 90s, they also appeared on the then popular animated series Beavis and Butthead, as the title characters comment over the Black No. 1 video.
These guys are like a cross between Danzig and Megadeth.
I think they're like a cross between Danzig and my butt.
Peter also made an appearance on The Jerry Springer Show, where they would have a discussion on groupies.
You have women that are throwing themselves at you every night you do a concert?
Sometimes, not always.
Not always, sometimes.
Unfortunately, sometimes men as well.
That strikes you as rather strange. I mean, are you up there playing, women are dancing, going crazy, throwing themselves at you, trying to meet you backstage? What do you think of these women?
Well, it's odd to me because this is my job. I'm not here to have a good time. I'm here to pay my phone bill and, pay the rent. If they want to throw themselves at me, well, that's their business.
And do you take them up on it? Do you sleep with some of them? Have sex with some
I'm
of them?
going to have to take the Fifth Amendment on that.
Well, if you got to pick one amendment, why not that? Yeah.
While on tour with Danzig, Peter told MTV that he had been writing material for the follow-up to Bloody Kisses, which they would begin recording once the tours wrapped up. Or, as Peter stated,
the record company likes to use typo negative the way a prostitute uses her vagina. And so they just want to prostitute us and get the most out of us that they possibly can until this album loses any saleability, and at that point we'll go back into the studio and make some more noise.
This album would be titled October Rust. Please be considerate of others. Kindly play this recording at low sound pressures.
October Rust. If you haven't got it already, what's your problem? Right, exactly.
I wouldn't buy it, I don't know.
With the success of Bloody Kisses, the band was able to get Roadrunner to back off when it came to production. Simultaneously, Case Wessels, founder of Roadrunner, said he wanted more radio singles with the next album. And to Peter's best flawed abilities, he sort of did that. Reminder, this is Peter Steele we're talking about. A man who is not very practical when it comes to songwriting. At least in the commercial sense. October Rust marks the first of 3 albums to feature programmed drums, which were handled by Josh. Johnny was also involved in the drum programming process. This was done at Josh's home studio, Sty in the Sky, before it was taken to Systems 2. This was done due to Peter's perfectionistic tendencies that made him a control freak. When it came to the songwriting process, Peter had a thing for symmetry, from beats per minute to other factors of songwriting. It explains why typo songs are so long. Even though Johnny recalled that Peter wanted to write songs with a more pop sensibility, getting that cohesion he didn't get with Bloody Kisses. Along with the changes of his person, Peter lyrically, according to what his bandmates have recalled, wanted to make this album catered more towards females, making songs that are more lush and romantic, but they still occasionally had Peter's trademark brand of sarcastic humor, and implied moments of genuine emotion. As a result, with this goal in mind, the hardcore elements and the cantos that were found on the last 3 albums were absent, and in its place is a doomy, alternative metal, and a more straightforward traditional gothic rock sound. As traditional as one can get with typo-negative songs. Disclaimer: the following segment of this video was written by a romanceless husk. If the interpretations are off in this segment, you know why. The album starts with a joke track that's just the sound of low-level buzzing, like if the speaker wasn't plugged in. After that, a spoken word intro plays that thanks the listener for buying the album and hoping they like what they hear.
A little joke there. This is Peter.
This is Johnny.
Kenny.
And Josh.
We just wanted to take a minute to thank you for picking up our latest recording of October Rust.
The album's first song and biggest hit, Love You to Death, is about being good enough in a relationship to please the one you love. This isn't just physically, it's also emotionally. Just like with Bloody Kisses before it, the song was edited down for the single and for the music video. Be My Druidess is about finding the right soulmate in the forest, a likely reflection on Peter's own romantic fantasies.
This is probably the perfect location, as you see here, for me to build my dream house, like a Frank Lloyd Wright type of falling water house in a location like this, but a lot more glass. And every morning when I wake up, I have the woods to one side and water to the other, the sky above. And it would always seem like I was outside and I could enjoy nature in all the seasons. So perhaps take a few trees down here, very few trees, build a nice little house for my woman, and worship her the rest of my life.
Die With Me is about a couple separating, like in the relocating sense, turning into a long-distance relationship. The Doors' Like My Girlfriend's Girlfriend was inspired by a polyamorous relationship. Possibly another fantasy of Peter's? The keys to this song really do sound inspired by Ray Manzarek. Fun fact, the song was written at Josh Silver's house in 15 minutes. In Praise of Bacchus tells the story about a girlfriend hating Peter to such volatile levels that she wanted to commit first-degree arson. Another fun fact, this song features Piston co-founder and bassist Valium performing vocals. It was around this time that Josh was also producing Piston's debut album, Number 1. Going back on topic about songs about women burning things, Burnt Flowers Fallen is about an unhinged girlfriend burning a bouquet of flowers given to her. Was Peter a pyrophiliac? Oh. The 10-minute Haunted is another fantasy where Peter makes love to the apparition of his dead girlfriend. The song's ominous sound, complemented by Josh's piano playing, gives the lyrics more impact. The choice cover for this album is Neil Young's Cinnamon Girl, which is about fantasizing about a girl to love. Their version is more beefed up, and like with Summer Breeze, they make it their own, minus the attempt at lyric modification. As for Neil Young himself, He wasn't aware of Typo's cover until decades later when he was interviewed by radio host Howard Stern, who, fun fact, Typo would later go on to contribute a song to his film Private Parts, as he was a massive fan of their cover, considering it one of his all-time favorite songs. The song they would contribute was a cover of Status Quo's Pictures of Matchstick Men, which would feature Ozzy Osbourne on vocals. And the band later performed on his radio show.
Lay into me right now at 9 o'clock in the morning. Go ahead.
On the first album,
okay,
all right, the whole first album was about your desire to kill your girlfriend and then kill yourself. You have always had fantasies of killing yourself and killing your girlfriend. Is that true?
More or less.
More or less. At least you're honest about it.
You're willing to admit that.
Yeah, I like your honesty. And you say Kurt Cobain is your hero because he had the balls to shoot himself.
That's correct.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Is this a depressed guy or what?
Are you more depressed than me?
I think I'm repressed.
No, you're a little depressed, right?
Sometimes.
Have you gone to a psychiatrist for this problem?
Yeah, but he told me I was crazy. He told me to get out.
He did. He even didn't want to deal with you. No one wants to deal with you.
Laughing.
Howard would later go on to show Neil Young Typo's cover of his own song. This was his reaction.
The first song you ever wrote, I'm talking about, have you ever heard Typo Negative's version of Cinnamon Girl?
No.
You haven't?
No, I haven't.
It is one of my favorite songs.
Typo Negative.
You never heard of them?
I've heard of them now. Great name.
They did a version. I'm so shocked. I would think.
You know,
are you
I
honored?
don't hear anything, Howard.
Where are you
very
sequestered?
little.
Where are you that you don't hear these things?
Yeah, I'm in my head. I'm missing a lot.
All right, I'm going to make your day now. Here's Typo Negative doing Cinnamon Girl. What do you think?
That's great.
Isn't that great?
I love it.
You do love it,
Yeah,
but you're
it's
laughing
great.
at it. I think you're
No,
smart.
no, I'm laughing with it.
You're
It was
enjoying it.
good. I was digging you singing it.
Oh.
I said, wow, that sounds one generation closer.
You should hear me do
And I
Old
looked
Man.
over there, and you were singing. You know the song perfectly. You know this exactly. You can clone this guy.
On the contrast to all this romantic stuff is Wolf Moon, that tells the tale of a man going down on a menstruating woman while turning into a werewolf. From Kenny and Johnny's recollection, Peter most likely wrote this as a joke, but people thought it was a deep and meaningful song, despite the contrary.
What, Wolf Moon? So he does like an interview with some French magazines.
Oh, this song, the Wolf Moon, it's so deep, it has such meaning. What is this about, Peter?
Oh, it's about a man turning into a werewolf when having cunnilingus with a woman.
When she's menstruating.
That's amazing.
That's what was great about his songwriting, because like you could take something as so layered and so textured and stuff like that, and then that's the subject matter. That's the great part about it.
Typo Negative's brand of humor tends to go over people's heads. The song's name is a reference to a full moon in the month of January, which is also mating season for wolves. The parentheses zoanthropic paranoia is a reference to zoanthropy, also known as clinical lycanthropy, a rare mental illness with which the person suffering from it thinks and acts like an animal. While most of these songs have to do with romance, there are three that are about completely different topics. The glorious liberation of the People's Technocratic Republic of Vinland by the combined forces of the United Territories of Europa, a 1-minute war-torn sounding track, is based on the fictional country of Vinland, which was created by Peter, with October Rust being the first appearance of the Vinland flag. The name was inspired by an area in North America that was explored by Norse Vikings around 1000 AD, which was led by Leif Erikson. Peter, who is of Scandinavian and Icelandic heritage, created the fictional country and flag to represent his interests and political ideas, specifically paganism and nature connectedness. Green Man's title was based on Peter's experience during his time at the Parks Department. While on duty, Peter would wear a green jumpsuit and kids would call him the Green Man. As a nod to this, the sound of a garbage truck can be heard at the start of the song, that supposedly was used by Peter himself at that time. Lyrically, the song is about Peter's love of nature, as well as the Green Man sculpture motif, which has been adapted into typo merchandise, specifically the foliate version, which resembles a human-like face that is made out of or completely surrounded by foliage, though there are different interpretations of this design, and the designs of this motif in general. Red Water, Christmas Morning is the most personal song on October Rust. The term red water could be an innuendo for red wine. To go with the Christmas theme, interpolations of Carol of the Bells and God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen can be heard. The song is based on Peter's father, who passed away in February of 1995. Like with the title track of Bloody Kisses, it's not stated explicitly, and on a surface level is about grieving over the death of loved ones. And that's what Peter was doing by writing this song. One could say this song is a sign of things to come. October Rust was released on August 20th, 1996, charting at number 42 on the US Billboard 200, and receiving a gold certification. In Roadrunner's eyes, that was considered a failure. According to Johnny Kelly, he was told by people at the label that they were expecting the album to sell 7 million copies, an unrealistic expectation.
Roadrunner was trying to put pressure on us to come up with something that could, surpass the success that Bloody Kisses had. That was Peter's attempt at it. And then, with discussing with some of the people that worked at the record label, their expectations were very unrealistic. What they were expecting, it never would have achieved it.
5 million records, something like that.
One guy told me 7 million records. It was like, we just got a gold record. You're expecting 14 times more on this record. And of course it didn't meet the expectations.
Plus we're a weird band. We weren't like,
Yeah. And we weren't a real radio band, and we weren't good looking. So we're not gonna attract that. And then after that, then they kind of backed off on their expectations. And like I was just joking a minute ago, they did have other bands in their roster that were, becoming more successful than we were. And so then, they pretty much left us alone to do our own thing at that point.
For Peter, on the other hand, it was a complete success, as he would get the attraction of various types of women. From April to May, they went on tour with Ozzy Osbourne and Sepultura on the Retirement Sucks tour, with Korn and Marilyn Manson on one show, and the Rollins Band taking Sepultura's opening spot on the last two shows. Throughout May to September, they would perform at multiple festivals in Europe and a festival in the US. From October to December, Typo shared the stage with various bands, such as Life of Agony, Again, Manhole, who would later be renamed Tora Setana, Piston, Deftones, Floodgate, a band formed by Kyle Thomas of Exhorder who were broken up at the time, the Butthole Surfers and Stone Temple Pilots, and Moonspell. The momentum was still going strong for Typo Negative, right before they descended into what could be considered their dark age.